Hey, Daniel, let's talk, I said, reaching for the remote and pausing the movie. What? You're pausing at the best part, what's going on? He complained, clearly annoyed. Daniel, you're 37 now, right? That's prime working age. Don't you think about the future? Spending all day at home drinking and watching TV, I started, trying to hold my frustration in check. The future? There are plenty of 37-year-olds who don't work. Many people enjoy life without a job, he shot back defensively. True, but those people have something else they're dedicated to. Do you? I pressed, trying to make him see the bigger picture. Yeah, I know you're upset about me not working. I'll look for another part-time job, he said, dismissive but with a touch of reluctant acknowledgement. While Daniel seemed stuck on only working part-time, I knew pushing him too hard could backfire, especially with his history of quitting, but it was becoming clearer that he needed to find some stability, and soon. One day, while I was at work, I received an unexpected text from Daniel that immediately set off alarm bells. Dad's retiring, so we're going to Spain to celebrate. Starting today, I'm borrowing your platinum card. We're going to enjoy ourselves on your credit card. I called him right away, my heart racing with confusion. What do you mean? A trip? Just what I said, he replied, sounding nonchalant. I don't understand, I pressed. Just what I said, he repeated. Please explain the implications of what I'm saying. The implications were impossible to ignore. While celebrating Peter's retirement was fine, Daniel should have discussed this trip with me before taking my credit card. The idea that he might have told his parents he was funding the trip himself, using my credit card no less, made my blood boil. I felt angry, betrayed, and taken advantage of. This was a glaring reminder that despite some progress in our relationship, deep-rooted issues, mainly responsibility and communication, still loomed large. As we continued to talk about his upcoming trip, Daniel said something that made my stomach drop. You mentioned borrowing a credit card. Do you mean the one from our house? Yeah, why? He asked, his tone casual, almost too casual. I own a platinum credit card. It's not just for high earners. Credit history and stable income are important factors, and it's possible to secure one in your 30s, even with a high annual fee. I find value in the benefits it offers, but this card was meant to be for my personal use. So you took the credit card from home? I asked again, trying to keep my voice steady. Yeah, so I'm counting on you to cover the payment, Daniel replied, too cheerful given the situation. His lightheartedness made it clear that he thought he was in control, but I knew the truth was about to complicate his plan. What are you waiting for? We need to leave, he urged, eager to get going. Hold on, I said, cutting him off. The credit card you took won't work. What? That can't be right. It's under your name, and it expires this month, he said, sounding confused. It's close, but it's already been replaced, I explained. The old one won't work anymore. I've already activated the new card, so the one you took is essentially useless. Daniel's disbelief grew. Are you lying, Angela? You're lying to stop me from using the card, aren't you? His voice, once casual, now carried a sharp edge of frustration. Yes, it expires this month, I admitted, which is why I already received a new one. You can try using the card, but it won't work. I'd love to see you attempt to pay with a card that's been deactivated. Daniel paused, muttering to himself, clearly caught off guard. I could hear his parents calling in the background, but he didn't seem to know what to say next. What should I do? I told them I'd pay for everything except the round-trip flight, he said, sounding desperate. Oh, so they covered the flight? I asked, trying to piece together the situation. Yeah, Dad felt bad about paying for the whole trip, so he covered the flight, Daniel explained, a slight hint of relief creeping into his voice. What should I do now? I'm about to take a cab, but I don't even have money for that. That's not my problem, I responded, my voice firm. You said you would pay for everything except the flight. Using my credit card was wrong from the start. You should be paying with your own money. How can I? I don't have any money right now, Daniel exclaimed, the weight of his situation finally hitting him. Daniel, this is exactly why things are like this, I said, frustration rising in my chest. You haven't been taking work seriously. You've been avoiding your responsibilities, and now you're in this mess. The situation was a painful reminder of the larger issues between us. Daniel had tried to impress his parents by planning a trip he couldn't afford, relying on deception rather than facing the reality of his financial situation. As I ended the call and returned to my work, I knew the truth would soon catch up with him. He would eventually have to come clean to his parents about his financial deception, and when he did, I hoped he would finally realize the gravity of his actions. To celebrate his retirement, I'm planning a special trip to Spain with our parents. Starting today, I'll be using your platinum card for the expenses so we can make the most of this occasion. I hope you understand the urgency because we need to leave soon. I'm a little confused. Can you explain what you mean by using my card? And what's the trip about? Sorry, I have to leave now, but we can go over the details later. Just a heads up, the card may not work. It turns out my husband, Daniel, already took it to fund a vacation with our parents. I've put up with a lot from Daniel, but this time, he's crossed a line. When he gets back, he's going to regret it. I'm Angela, and at 35, I've built a successful career at a major company. After graduating from a prestigious university, I've reached a point where I earn enough to support not only myself but also Daniel, who's currently unemployed. We've been married for 4 years and are considering starting a family, though we haven't yet. Even though my career is thriving and my income is steady, I can't help but feel something's missing. The idea of having a child is just that, an idea. Meanwhile, Daniel's unemployment is a persistent reality. Tonight, I'm not hungry, I've already snacked, but that's a small issue compared to Daniel's job situation. He didn't go to a job interview today. Instead, he stayed home, browsing job sites. Daniel hasn't had a full-time job in over a year and has only taken temporary, part-time positions, quitting each one after a short time. He's looking for both full-time and part-time work, but I keep encouraging him to focus on securing a steady, full-time role. I know there's a right time for everything, but I wish he could find something stable soon. It's clear he can't be pushed too hard, given what happened with his last job, but I think it's finally time for him to settle into something more permanent. Daniel's last job ended on a difficult note after a fallout over work policies. He stood his ground against his boss, supported by his colleagues, but as tensions escalated, his coworkers sided with the boss, leaving Daniel feeling isolated and betrayed. He couldn't handle the growing animosity and eventually quit. Afterward, he retreated into himself, spending most of his time alone in our room. It took a couple of weeks for him to re-engage with life and help around the house. He made jokes about having plenty of free time, but the smiles didn't quite reach his eyes. It took another few weeks before he started looking for work again. At first, he was optimistic and ready to move forward, but the job search wasn't as easy as he had hoped. Despite his qualifications and effort, rejections kept coming, which he blamed on his difficult exit from his last job. It left him feeling discouraged, questioning his value, and it's been hard to watch. The cycle of rejection began to wear on him. One day, I came home to find shredded resumes all over the living room floor. It was clear his latest interview hadn't gone well. I suggested he clean up the mess, and he admitted he was considering giving up on job hunting altogether, thinking we could live on my salary alone. While some people are happy as full-time homemakers, that wasn't Daniel's ideal situation. It felt more like an escape from the pressure of finding work. I recognized his struggle, especially with the fallout from his last job, and decided to give him some space to process it all. Still, we needed to talk seriously about his future and career goals. The situation couldn't continue indefinitely. I've always been dedicated to my work, so this extended break isn't just about relaxing, it's preparation for what's ahead. It's good to hear that you're focusing on the future too. Living close to Daniel's parents, Helen and Peter, has its complexities. After Daniel quit his job, they started visiting more often, likely concerned about him. When they learned he was getting ready for his next career move, they seemed relieved, but the reality was far different. The beer's running low. Can you pick some up on your way home? I asked one evening. Again? You're drinking too much. Try to cut back a little, I suggested, gently. Fine, I'll get it myself, Daniel replied, a little sharp. Despite how things appeared, Daniel wasn't preparing for a new job. His days were mostly spent watching TV and drinking beer. I suspect he was embarrassed by his unemployment, so I chose not to tell his parents the full story to spare his feelings. After more than 4 months of inactivity in his job search, I knew it was time to confront the elephant in the room. Daniel, maybe it's time to start looking for work again. You seem more settled now, I suggested gently. He shot me an incredulous look. What? It's only been 7 months since my last job. You want me to go back to work after everything that happened? His voice mixed disbelief with irritation. I just think the break has been long enough. Let's not drag this out, I urged, trying to keep the conversation calm. Stop nagging, you don't get it. Your job's going fine, but I have my own struggles. Everyone faces work problems and relationship issues, he snapped, his frustration evident. Despite the tension, Daniel agreed to start job hunting, which I saw as a small victory, but as he walked out mid-conversation, clearly upset, I knew we weren't quite done. When he calmed down, I planned to apologize, hoping to smooth things over. What came next, though, took me by surprise. I got a job because you pushed me, Daniel said one day, a reluctant edge to his voice. That's great. Where? I asked, feeling a spark of hope. At a nearby supermarket, he replied, his tone indifferent. Then, almost dismissively, he added, But it's part-time, no need to work too hard. I paused, not wanting to sound. Later that evening, after a long day at work, I received a call from Helen, Daniel's mother. I heard from Daniel. He tried to use your credit card and lied about working. I'm so sorry for the trouble this has caused. She apologized. No, please don't apologize, Helen, I replied, trying to calm the situation. I appreciate you calling, but I'm just trying to figure things out. I'm so sorry about the credit card, she continued. We'll cover the costs of this trip when we get back. I'll make sure Daniel apologizes and starts looking for a job right away, Helen promised, though I could sense the concern in her voice. I appreciate that, Helen, I said, feeling a pang of guilt at the thought of the conversation ahead, but I'm considering divorcing Daniel. Divorce? Because of this? Her shock was evident. Partly, yes, it's not just the credit card, it's everything. Daniel has been taking money from me for a while now. I stopped giving him money to curb his drinking, but he still found ways to get it. He took money from my wallet, sometimes just $10, other times $50. Over time, it added up. When he took my credit card for this trip, it wasn't just about money anymore. It was about realizing he had no intention of changing. I understand, she said, her voice quiet now. Should I tell Daniel about the divorce? Can you just tell him that I want a divorce? We'll talk about everything else when he gets back, I said, trying to keep things as calm as possible for the time being. The next morning, Daniel called. I didn't answer, though I had a sinking feeling he'd already learned about the divorce. By evening, when I returned home from work, I found him sitting in the living room, clearly having cut his trip short. I'll start working seriously now, Daniel said, his voice full of desperation. Please don't leave me, I'm sorry. His apology caught me off guard, but it came too late. After a year of giving him chances, of voicing my concerns and warnings, he was now asking for one more. I couldn't keep pretending things would change. I'm not giving you another chance, Daniel, I said, standing firm. You gave up on me a long time ago. My decision is final. Can you leave? My voice was steady, but inside I was a storm of emotions. The cycle of empty promises had to end. Please don't say that. If you won't leave, should I move out? He asked, his voice tinged with defeat. Only if you can afford the rent here, I replied, trying not to show the hurt that lingered beneath my words. He fell silent. The reality of his financial situation was hitting him hard. He had no money for rent and no job to rely on. I watched him quietly leave the house, the weight of everything hanging between us. A small part of me wanted to offer help, maybe give him some money for a cab, but I reminded myself, he was an adult. He had to manage his own life now. As I stood in the doorway watching him leave, a strange emptiness settled over me. It was sad, yes, but also relieving. This moment, as painful as it was the beginning of something new for me. Later that evening, after Daniel had gone to his parents' house, Helen called again. They let him stay for the night, but they told him he has to leave tomorrow. They were worried if he stayed longer, it might just reinforce his dependence on them. It was tough, but they believe it's necessary for him to figure things out on his own. When Daniel returned to our house the next day, desperation was clear in his voice. Please help me, I've got nowhere to go and no money, he begged, his face a picture of defeat. No, this is the consequence of your actions, Daniel, I said, my voice firm but filled with quiet sorrow. You need to handle this yourself. You've had plenty of chances. It hurt, but I couldn't go on enabling him. Over the past year, he'd neglected every responsibility he had, choosing to live irresponsibly. The weight of it all had finally worn me down, and I had to let go. The divorce proceedings moved quickly with the support of his parents, and I'm not sure where Daniel went after that. He probably continued his pattern, bouncing from job to job, making excuses, never fully taking responsibility for his life. You'd think I'd feel lonely without him, but surprisingly, I didn't. Daniel's presence had always been a source of constant stress, walking on eggshells, trying to avoid confrontation. Now that he was gone, I found myself living a life of peace, one I hadn't realized I'd been missing. Our life together had become a burden, and until he left, I hadn't fully understood how heavy